This week on your Old School RuneScape update, the adventure continues in leagues with mid-level crises, Wintertotd, treasure trails, and leaning into combat. We also discuss new feelings about Kourend's density and what changes to Forestry mean for woodcutting. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, Episode 4, recorded Saturday, November 25th, 2023. Flyby Social. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. Sirion and myself are back this week, progressing through that wonderful thing known as leagues. How are we doing this week?
Good. Trying to squeeze out little bits of time every day to work on it.
Yeah, it's gotten to that point, hasn't it, where it's kind of become almost like a reflex, I think. At least that's how it felt for me, kind of. But, is that right? Is that a good way of describing it? I don't know. But nonetheless, if you're joining us for the first time, the Old School RuneScape Update talks about the week's news in Old School RuneScape and, of course, what we have also been doing, amongst other things, in Old School RuneScape. And as it happens to be at this point in time, leagues, we also, of course, look at how game updates impact the wider game and whatnot. We've been doing this for a few episodes now. I'm Shane12088 in game. He is Sirion. We're both members of something wonderful called Clan Quest. If you guys have never heard of that before, if you're ever interested in a clan or anything to that effect, but invite you to check out the show notes at update.show/OS, and we have a Discord as well at update.show/Discord. So do you just want to jump into leagues again this week? I think that's probably the best way for us to begin with what we've been doing, right?
I mean, I have played very little on my main account in the past week, so, if you ask me what have you been doing in the past week, leagues. It's the only answer, I think.
Okay. Well, we'll let you start because I have a bit of a PTSD story about Maine to tell you, but leagues, of course, has been the wonderful refresher that we all thought it would be going into it. So, where are you at, skill total wise, progression wise, and just in general with the entire adventure?
Yeah, so skill total, good question. I think I'm out and about. I could quickly just hit this play now button to find out. But I think it's about level 1300, 1400. Wow, okay, things go faster than I thought. So yeah, 1400 something. I have tier 5, which was my big goal because that unlocks the treasure relic.
Yeah.
Tier 6 has been slow though to get to. I feel you need to really start doing a bunch of harder tasks that involve a few
the
more
big
grinds.
chunky ones.
Yeah, and to be honest, I might have deviated a little bit from, doing actual tasks. Mostly just looking at the long term, bringing up my skills, all that, focusing what I want to focus on. But yeah, no, treasure trials, I've been doing a bunch of those. They're quite delightful, with way fewer locations available and minimum steps from the relic and all that.
That's actually quite interesting that you mentioned that, because I am not a person in the main game who considers treasure trails delightful, which I have myself scratching my head too about that relic choice, but more on that in a bit. But you went with the treasure trail.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Like delightful. I don't know. I think clue scrolls are something you can really do well and fun. You can even get good at, right? Like you just have that.
There's an
knowledge
optimization
ready
to them.
and exactly. But they have some annoying steps in them that are clearly they're not difficult. They're just time consuming. Like the puzzle boxes are the bane of my life. That's the kind of stuff, and people use plugins for that these days, and I don't like that either, because to me that sort of undermines the whole sort of the balance and the design below it as well. So I feel it just needs a massive refresh, but it's a piece of content that I think people either love or hate, and I don't think you can touch it without making someone upset.
Right, it's a staple, and changing it substantially would not necessarily be for the benefit of everybody who interacts with it. And you see just how much of a staple it is when you look at the league's task list and see how many of those tasks are related to clue scrolls of some sort or another, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this relic tier 5 one, it's tier 5, is an interesting pick. And this is I am 95% certain this is the relic I'm going for at tier 5. I'm right on the edge of it. I've unlocked it. I just haven't committed yet. And
oh my god, you need to commit because you lose out on the passive bonuses of the tier as well.
No. I haven't done much on League since I reached that point, and that was 2 days ago. So I'm just sitting at a farming patch waiting, because that was the last task, harvest some super compost. But that's beside the point. I'll talk about what I've been doing later. There's so many league tasks that deal with the clue scrolls and the points that come from them. And in many ways, because of that, unless you want the full clue scroll experience, I feel as though that this relic at this tier is almost a no-brainer. Because of course there's one as well that helps you with combat and slayer, which that might be a way to go. There's another one that helps you with your gathering skills. It makes it so food is initially cooked when you fish it, and makes it so ore is immediately turned into bars, and logs are immediately burnt, which is kind of redundant if you already have Trickster. So that, combined with just the amount of points that are on this league from clue scrolls, it kind of makes sense for those of us like us who chose Trickster as tier 1 and don't need the fire making aspect. So in that way, it feels almost like a no-brainer to go with this one here. Was it a no-brainer for you?
Yeah, it was. Like, I didn't consider the Slayer one at all, because there's so many things already to help with combat. Like tier 7 and 8 are fully combat related, and of course you got the tier 4 one as well,
the big one.
The big one. So I felt I didn't need more of that. I didn't want to. I wanted to keep things a little bit broad rather than go on a single topic. And the Infernal Gathering, there's some really good things about it, but because all of a sudden, right now my production skills are really locked behind the gathering skills. So the bottleneck on those skills is gathering the resources for it.
Yeah.
That being said, so like smithing, for example, is going to be a pain for me.
Oh yeah, just imagine trying to find rune ore.
Yeah, well, the nice thing with that relic is that you don't have to worry about the millions of coal you're going to need as well.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it felt a little bit more niche, so I decided to just go with the clue scrolls. There's a bunch of things I want to get from it anyway. A bunch of ranged equipment, like the whole ranger set, of course, comes from clue scrolls.
Yeah, that's right.
That's gonna be what I'm gonna be using until I get Armadillos, if I go Ascania, which is a choice I haven't committed to yet. So so many choices, basically.
Right, and like we talked about last week, I don't think there's a wrong choice.
No. But yeah, no, that's what I've been focusing on. Like, I've been doing a bunch of clues. I've been getting some tasks done. Right now I'm at Wintertotd. I know it's a little bit useless, but I wanna get a untrimmed fire making cape, just so I can say I got an untrimmed fire making cape.
Okay.
I'm not gonna bother keeping it after that. Like, I'm not gonna bother with the whole drop trick.
Yeah. I mean, it's a temporary cape for 7 more weeks or so, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna get it. I want to get it first because I know I could knock out 99 thieving in no time with Trickster.
Yeah.
but I want to get 99 farming first, just so I can say
just
it was
so
my
that you
first
can say that you did it.
There's no good reason why I'm doing it this way, except for I want to do it this way.
Right.
So,
and I'm going to try and do the same thing with farming, unless there's need for me to thieve stuff that kind of throws me in the front of that.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, I mean, Wintertotd has been fantastic. I started at 550 fire making. 4 kills later, I was 70 fire making. Another 4 kills later, I was 80 fire making. It's not going to take me very long, I think,
okay,
to get to 99 fire making. And
all
of
right,
course,
that's nice.
The drop rates are boosted, so you get. We all know that these supply boxes are like big, dopamine hits whenever you hit something cool, and I've been feeling that as well with the clue scrolls. Like, just opening these things is like this little bit of dopamine, like, oh, amazing rewards. And Wintertotd does the same thing, and because you get like, it's raining rares basically. Like, I've gotten 2 boomer torches and the pyromancer's chest piece, torso piece, in what's now 15 kills, right? So, that it just feels good, and Leagues does that, right? Like, you get lots of little dopamine hit. That's what it is good for. It's not good for a long game because you lose interest after you achieve all the goals, but that's why it works so well as a short game mode.
Yeah, and then that's also the same thing with so many small tasks up front, and then they start getting bigger and bigger. But as you get more XP, those become easier, and so on and so forth. And I mentioned, as for me this week, I took a couple day break from leagues, actually, because we have a couple of goals in the main game that I will talk about. But my league's experience has certainly been interesting this week, in that, as I mentioned, I parked the league's character at the compost bin, and extracting super compost was the last task to bring me to that relic. And next time I log in, I'm going to be making that commitment to either the Clue Scroll relic or Infernal Gathering. I think it's going to be the Clue Scroll relic. I think I just need to have a couple quick looks at, if there's going to be any need for me to have, in effect, instantly cooked fish or bars that immediately comes from ores. And on that, there's actually going to be a change coming in the next week, where they're going to be adding a toggle to these tools, so that they act as crystal tools, of course, and they're going to make it so that you can toggle off their effects, so that if you wanted raw fish for some reason, you could get something raw instead of cooked. So I mean, that's good, and that kind of makes it a bit more of an interesting choice. But I still think it's going to be the Treasure Seeker relic. I also had a bit of a crisis for a few moments in leagues, and I was trying to think, I need to train rune crafting. I need cosmic runes to enchant these dig site pendants. Where am I going to get cosmic runes? And then I think it was you who said, remember, you can go to the abyssal plane, not the abyss where you go do rune crafting, because that's part of the wilderness, but you can get to the abyssal plane through a fairy ring. And I spent, about 35, 45 minutes there, and I got all the talismans up to nature. And that was that crisis resolved, because I thought, geez, how am I going to get these runes? And then I remembered that the abyssal plane exists, and just had some fun, like you said, getting those dopamine hits with rune crafting, because you can, in effect, go sit at the pure essence mine, note essence with Banker's Note, and then a while later go to your favorite rune crafting altar and just do the exact same thing in reverse, making runes as fast as we would have ever liked to have made runes. And it's kind of fun seeing rune crafting like that, because that's not a way we train rune crafting in the main game. It's certainly also not a way that rune crafting was trained in RuneScape 3. It's also not a way that rune crafting was trained way back in the day when old school was the main game. And the thing that made me smile about this is that I don't know if you ever experienced this, but kind of shows me what it must have been like to be somebody who had a business of people running Essence. I don't know if you've ever experienced that.
I've done the running before.
Okay, you did.
Yeah.
You did. I did too. Nice. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Who did you run for? Do you remember?
No one. This is just general air ultra running.
Okay. I'm talking about where you just bring essence to a rich person and then they make the runes.
Yeah, no. This was air ultra running. You run there and people would be advertising how much they would pay, and you would just trade that.
Oh, okay.
Person. Often they wouldn't even pay you. They would just give you runes. With a certain multiplier because high level rune crafting. And then you would sell the runes again for money, and that was usually the way it went.
Yeah.
No.
Back in the day, me and a few others who became integral early parts of the RSB&B community, at first stages, did runecraft running for Larry R. People who are familiar with RuneScape history know who Larry R is, of course, the first person to reach double natures, but didn't make it to become the first person to get 99 rune crafting, and that in itself was an entire story in itself, because you were in effect just running between the Kourend general store and the nature rune altar. But with that, it was really an adventure of just allowing people who are running around there to make some extra money while helping Larry R out. And what that does for me in leagues is it kind of gives me a perspective of what it must have been like for that person just to, get huge amounts of runecrafting XP when there was no other way of doing that in game through things like the ZMI altar and whatnot. So that was a fun little experience this week. And, just in addition to that, it's really been a matter of leaning into the ranged combat style, because that's what I went with for my combat relic, Archer's Embrace, and I'm really starting to enjoy it. I got the bone crossbow going. The next miniature crisis is going to be figuring out where to get a rune crossbow. I know the main choice of that is the steel dragons, and that they drop the runite limbs, but I know those things are very, very high level, that I don't know necessarily at this point what combat levels I would need to take those on. I'm thinking somewhere in the 70s probably, and it might have to be magic just based on how some of the affinities for that line up. And that brings us to a discussion that you and I had about this, that you told me, just go treasure seeker and do clue scrolls, because the hard clues drop rune crossbows.
It's elite. It's elite. I was wrong. It's elite. Yeah. 1 in 30 though, so pretty good chance if you do a few.
Especially with the multipliers.
But yeah, you need to do a few before you get it. Yeah.
Or of course the other thing is to go try and kill a steel dragon.
Or go kill a single steel dragon.
Yeah.
I have the same problem, right?
Or just level up and make it with rune myself, but
I want to switch to broadbolts, but yeah, you need at least a rune crossbow to fire them. At this point, I'm generally thinking that that the Armadillo crossbow might come first.
And that's another fun question in itself. Can you in effect get through God War's dungeon and whatnot with an adamant crossbow, with a bone crossbow? I don't know. I haven't been there yet on old school, so I don't necessarily know how the accuracy is going to line up with this.
The alternative is I figure out how to do Chambers of Xeric, because the Dragon Hunter crossbow has a pretty good drop rate from that. But,
that too. See, and this is the thing, and I want to bring the listeners, and I think this was also something an itch we wanted to scratch when we first laid out the show, is that we want to bring the listeners on this journey, because one thing we said on episode 0 was that you're coming on an adventure with us, and it's not going to be an adventure driven by people who are 100% familiar with old school RuneScape's endgame. We are aiming to show what it is like for the average RuneScape player to be going through old school, to be going through leagues. And these are some that I want to call midlife leagues identity crises that we're running up against that we don't necessarily know how we're going to handle yet. And I have a feeling it's going to be a case for some of them of kind of just walking into the corner without realizing where our nose is, if that analogy makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a little bit concerned about that, but it's nothing. It's nothing that's dissuading me, and in many ways, the challenge behind it is what's keeping me going with leagues, those sorts of things. And it's that typical RuneScape path where it's like I want to go do this goal at the ultimate end, but if I do this, and this along the way, getting to that final thing becomes a little bit easier. So that's how that goes. And that's also been the experience with unlocking the next relic tier, realizing that, I'm only 220 points away, and I have a selection of tasks, each that are worth, 40 points each, that can get me there relatively quickly. I'm going to do this before I continue on doing the main thing that I'm on. And that's been really fun for me. And just to give people an idea of where I'm going with this, after I got the talismans is when I started that push to the next relic. But I think after that, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing the Kourend favor, just to unlock everything that's around Kourend, and perfect time to be doing it after that next relic because the minigame point multiplier increases. And I think the next logical thing after that is just to continue my fletching to level 69. Yeah, no jokes.
Nice.
Yeah, no jokes. For the Runite crossbow. When I do eventually get the limbs, unless I manage to get one, like you said, from elite clues. So that's leagues. But I also did mention I took a bit of a break from leagues because we have a couple quests, namely Kingdom Divided and Hero's Quest Down the Path that needed some skill requirements for it, and there's a skill called Thieving that without Trickster is pain. I will say.
Oh, I didn't think it was pain.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
No, you didn't. Okay.
No, I just sat at some kind of stall.
The fruit stall?
No, I did most of it at the baker stall, I think. I don't know what I did after that actually for training, but
see, you can't remember. That's why. That's why it was.
I mean, if it was horrible, I would have remembered. So
really, you don't think it'd be the other way around?
Yeah, really.
Okay. Well, I took a tour through the fruit stalls in Kourend. I then decided that I'm gonna go experience what blackjacking was like back in the day.
Oh, that's your mistake.
Okay. I just love how you had that reaction. Because that's exactly what the problem was.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Could have told you that. Don't do that.
So you know where I wound up instead?
Well, did you wind up in Poly?
No. I mean, obviously, yes. For blackjacking. But I wound up at the Squirk Farm.
Oh. Right.
Yeah. So I'm doing autumn squirk juice. And I'm just a hair away from level 52 thieving. Requirement.
Are you using the plugin for it? There's a plugin for it, isn't there?
No.
Oh, I think there might be a plugin that just tells you when to go.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah,
why am I not surprised?
It's not the most engaging content now, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. I'm gonna have to see if that plugin exists and works for the autumn room.
Yeah, you could also look into stealing artifacts in Port Piscarius if you have the level for it.
I did do that for a bit, but I decided based on the number of artifacts there was that it would just be better to, do the squirk farming, because looking at the XP numbers, it was only going to be about 14 glasses of squirk juice.
Gotcha.
Which is 42 squirk fruits with the autumn one.
Yeah, I remember doing the farm on RS3, which I don't think was RS3 back in the day to do it. So
yeah,
very long time ago.
Yeah, and I kind of squared off that content, and this is really my first time leaning into it with all my heart. And it's not too bad once you figure out the movement mechanics. Is only a really annoying part of the autumn room, and I think I don't know if we mentioned this on the show before on episode 1 or something around that effect, but there was the Squirkin' Worlds at one point. Their activity has substantially waned since League started. And for anybody who's not aware, the Squirkin' Worlds were in effect set up because it was determined that if you put enough people through the Squirk farms, the elementals in there will not attack you. So there were worlds at one point with 1,500 plus people doing the Squirkin' minigame, to the point where Jagex said, okay, this is a thing, we're going to, fully embrace this and give you 2 Squirkin' Worlds. So we'll have to, of course, wait and see if that comes back after the fact. But no, and I mean, this is gonna sound like a broken record to anybody who knows me as well. It's just that the farming has also been continuing, of course, on the main account too, while Leagues has been running, because that's something you can definitely do without too much of a time commitment. Is just keep the herb runs going, keep the tree runs growing, and I'm at level 65 farming, so that's gonna unlock the next phase of the farming guild. So that is fun. But I think there was a couple of other things that we kind of just wanted to mention as well on this week's show, specifically in relation to where we've been running around in Kourend, in terms, and this was something you picked up on, and we had an interesting discussion in Free about this.
This is going to sound, I don't know, not necessarily hypocritical, but I remember in a past episode saying how much I like Kourend. I've been spending a bunch of time there in the last week or so, because I mean that's one of the regions I've unlocked, but and a lot of tasks are there for me right now. But what I started noticing is that so much of it is empty. It's so empty. Like half the buildings are completely empty, and when I say empty, I mean absolutely empty. Not even like a range or a sink or anything to examine. It's just
it's empty.
It's empty, and it's ironic because I know a lot of people say, "Oh, but the entire game world is so dense, and here they have a whole new continent, and they finally had the room to put it all spread out," and it just.
You're leaning into the exact argument that I was going to make with this. And
it just doesn't feel right.
Right. And we need to be 100% clear in that. I think that in our arrival in Old School, one of the highlights has definitely been Kourend.
Oh yeah,
in terms of its content, its areas, its quests, etc.
I also like how it looks. It's just Lothar doesn't feel like a city, for example. That feels like it's such an awkward place. I don't like the Arceus place because it's a few large buildings around a town and 2 buildings have something in it. I think the places that look best are probably
Hosidius
and the Shazian areas. Port Piscarius isn't bad, but that too, it takes forever to run through it. Like it's bigger than Varrock, and it feels like it shouldn't be because it's a shady port town. Like the entire thing is built on the water. Like, yeah.
Right. And, I think the thing that you're touching on maybe comes from the fact that when you look at Kourend itself, we go back to how it originally landed in game, as we discussed on episode 2, and the different world map layout it had, right? Realizing that there were a number of changes put forward and a number of actual map redesigns put forward by players that brought it to the point at where it's at now. And I think the in effect hand-wavy way of getting around this is to say that the reason it is the way it is, in that it's not as dense as the main world, is because no matter which RuneScape you look at, and I think this is true for old school as well, is there's always a question that there's just so much on the game world, and it always feels that even if you're running places, there's stuff that you're running by. So Kourend is a large continent in particular there, right? Zaya. And I think, and I might be wrong on this, I think the feeling might have just been making it feel as though that, you're experiencing that 2002 RuneScape feeling where there's just these huge gaps of vastness between places that you want to go. I think that's one way of looking at it. And I think the other thing, and this is probably maybe more likely, is that it's just due to the way that it was redesigned. Because if we look at the minimap history on this, as we talked about on episode 2, the original version that shipped was a lot more compact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the overall size of Kourend as a kingdom. I think it's fine. I just think that the places where there is something should be a little bit more compact, and then just having more space between the places. Right?
Sure.
So if you look at Hosidius, like that feels more compact, right? Like even there's a bunch of empty buildings, but at least most buildings have like a range or a sink, or they're one of the houses for the mahogany home. So they tend to all have something in it. And Shasian, less so, but it feels a little bit like a city, though especially the city part of it, like the war camp is fine. The city part could do with some condensing as well. And then you got it, I think. Like, I don't mind that there's a big open area that's the Kourend woodland with some hunting places. Like, that's fine, right? It's just Lovakeng and Arceus feel weird, right? Like they're scattered buildings in a wide open plain.
Wait, Lovakeng and Arceus, weren't those the original two that really weren't changed that much in the redesign, if I remember the map correctly?
That might be. Yeah. That might very well be.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, that's been a little qualm I have.
Yeah, and it's not like game breaking in any way. It's just something that you kind of pick up on that feels different, and you're like, is it supposed to be this way, or was it designed to, or is there something that was a bit of an oversight with that, right? So, but like you said,
looking at the first map, layout wise, Hosidius was completely redone, Shasian was completely redone, and Port Piscavilius, Arceus, and Lovakeng weren't. So you're right. That's basically where the split lies. The two that were completely redone, Shasian and Hosidius, feel so much better to me. Yeah, you're right. It's the ones that were reworked that are better.
And I think when you expand that further, when you look at the amenities that are in Arceus and Piscavilius and Lovakeng, there's enough there to get by with, whereas there wasn't previously in Hosidius and Shasian. Hence the redesign, and hence why it was able to get by with just feeling the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, that explains it, and I don't think it changes the way we feel about it in terms of it maybe feeling a bit vast, but at the same time, like I mentioned coming into this segment, there were just a bunch of quests as well that we absolutely have loved doing in Kourend. There, of course, were also unique environments as well that have been really well done in Kourend, dare I say. So those are all positive things at the end of the day. And I think one other thing that we wanted to talk about this week on the show was another thing that we kind of smiled about when it came out, and we really got ourselves engrossed in, was Forestry. And we're seeing a bunch of, or rather a blog post about some incoming Forestry changes here that are in effect streamlining the event items, streamlining the random events. You first brought this up to me in that, I don't know, did you feel like that it needed to go this way, or did you like it the way it was? The Forestry changes.
I like most of the changes they're doing. I agree with the overall sentiment that the skill felt a little bit, it became too complicated with all the items, and I just didn't really want to engage with it. I was really very happy to just go grab an axe, chop a tree, right? Like that should be the extent of it. And then the events should be a layer on top that I can choose to interact with. That to me sounds like good skill design, but the fact that you need like a bee on a stick and all that stuff just to do things, to me, it
It's
never
a step
felt
too
right.
far. And another thing that the blog post says really well is that it effectively made Forestry something that you were engaging with on its own, and that you were going to a Forestry world, and then you were getting in a friends chat and finding which woodcutting area to go to and engaging in that event, rather than having the Forestry events just be a little cherry on top that appears when you're woodcutting on your own.
Right, and that, to me, what they're doing with that, like I agree. First of all, I should say that first and foremost, I think that I actually got a little bit annoyed at times when I would be just like chopping away peacefully, and like this massive crowd of people would come in, give some God, how they're called, thingies a haircut, and then run away again. Like, no, that didn't feel right. At the same time, I also kind of like the idea of, I'm just sitting here in the bank, a drainer, doing my bank standing things, or just running past. I see an event starting. I just want to grab my hatchet and participate, right? Because that's the social thing to do. Like that, to me, makes the world light. It's the same with the other thing that has been having a lot of controversy and talk about recently, and I can't think of the name. Fallen Stars. There you go. Fallen Stars. Right? I see one and I go and pick up my pickaxe and engage with it, because that's sort of what's happening in the world at this particular time. Yeah. It's very much in the spirit of distraction and diversion.
Dangerous word.
I don't know if that's a term that's being used in old school. In RuneScape, it refers to these kind of sort of skilling activities you do on the side that aren't necessarily the main training method. I know how that is with Fallen Stars right now, but they shouldn't be the main training method, but there's still something you can engage with as a distraction.
There are three distractions and diversions in old school: the Champions Challenge, treasure trails, and shooting stars.
Yeah, okay. We might need to have a discussion at some point of what should be called a distraction and diversion. But, Forestry to me should fit that bill. And I think with the changes they made, where if you come into the area, see a thing, and start engaging with it, you only get 10% of the XP, it takes that entire social aspect out of it. And I like the sentiment, and I think we should avoid this whole thing where people teleport in, do a thing, teleport elsewhere. I'm just not sure if this is the right solution, because you also punish the people that mean well and just notice the event and want to participate in it, because it's the social thing to do, right? Like, part of the Forestry changes were to make the skill more social.
Yeah.
And now we're punishing people who just want to do a flyby social. Right?
Yeah, I get that. And I also think that, for me, the biggest changes that came in with Forestry were the changes to the way that the trees work in terms of, not being instantly depletable and not being 100% competitive like they were previously. I feel like that is something that is there, and just the random events and whatnot were a layer on top of that. So I'm kind of in the same camp as you, that I don't know that they needed to be one of the core training methods that was there, and that people needed to be going to hunt for them. And I feel like it's better to have this discussion now, shortly after it's come out, than waiting, months or maybe a year and a half down the line of changing this, and in effect just completely changing how this works and what would have become a woodcutting meta over time, I say. So it's good these discussions are happening. And again, I feel like, and this will probably be the last thing I have to say on this, but I feel like the communications team related to Old School and the community team related to this always do a very good job at conveying what the changes need to be, why they need to be done, and what the end result is going to be for this. And I feel like that's what the Old School community is built up around, and that's a very good thing to see in this world. And I don't know if there's been a time in the past where they haven't done that, and they in effect put their foot on the rake and got smacked in the head. I don't know if they've done that before, but I have been very pleased with watching, for the short time that I have been watching, how the community and communications team talk to the player base with Old School.
No argument, dang.
Yeah. So, anyways, I believe that's about it for this episode of the Old School RuneScape update. Anything you want to say? Parting words before we conduct another week of leagues before leaving the listeners?
No. If I'm not here next week, come dig me out of leagues. I'm probably stuck under the surface of it. It's addictive. It's a problem.
We didn't know what we were going to think of it, and this will be just one little behind the peak curtain of how Shane and Sirion work. Wait, that sounds wrong. Anyways, behind the scenes look at how the Old School RuneScape update works. That sounds better. Going into leagues, we didn't know if we were going to like it, and we said, it might just be 2 weeks, and we might just be back to discussing what we're doing on the main game. but that hasn't happened, so we're thankful for that.
No, it hasn't happened, and I don't see myself going back to playing main game unless I have to.
Alrighty, folks. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Old School RuneScape update. If you want the podcast delivered automatically to you, you can subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and more. Also YouTube at youtube.com/OSRS update. And with that being said, we'll be back next week for another episode of the Old School RuneScape update. Take care, everyone. See you then.
Bye.